The stock exchange is the place where all securities purchase and sale operations are carried out, both shares and public or private bonds and other financial assets. To explain in a simpler way, pay attention to this story. Juan is a young businessman who has a pizza company. Juan thinks he has the best pizzas in the city, but our dear Juan is only available to the east side of the city, and his sister loves the pizzas that Juan's company makes, but his sister lives on the south side of town. One day his sister gives him the great idea of making some more branches on the south side of the city, so that she can enjoy the pizzas of her brother's company, and at the same time Juan would have an opportunity to generate more income with the extra branches. Juan decides that he wants to make 3 more branches, but he realizes that his capital is not enough to create the branches. Sometime later Juan came up with an idea and said, "I'm going to print 5,000 papers and sell them for $50 to raise capital, and then repay them for $70. These papers are known as stocks." Then the next day Juan had the 5,000 papers of him in the center of the city, exulting with a great voice. "Whoever buys these papers for $50 will pay them back next year for $70. The people who were walking in the area stopped to listen, and began to buy all the papers they could. By sunset Juan had already sold all the papers. Happy that he already had all the necessary capital for the branches, he got down to the plate while the people who bought the papers were eager for the next year to collect their money for the paper they bought. A few weeks later Pedro, one of Juan's company workers, realized that Juan was selling papers at $50 to reimburse them at $70. To which Pedro did not hold back, and went immediately to Juan's office to buy at least one paper. But when trying to buy the papers from Juan, Juan said that he no longer had papers to sell. Pedro went home very sad, knowing that everyone had papers except him. When he got home he met the neighbor, who he asked him why he was sad, and he replied that they all had papers, that his boss was selling less than him. His neighbor, seeing Pedro's need to obtain one of those papers, tells Pedro, "Pedro, I have 3 papers, but yes, do you want to? You can buy me one for $55. Pedro accepted the proposal and bought it. That's how it was happening with hundreds of other people. Some wanted to buy and others wanted to sell, to a point where there was already a place where people would buy papers from the E1 gave a few who had all the papers. A seller observed that his friend sold the papers at $58, and he decided to raise his price because he saw that people could pay $58 for the papers, and that is how all the sellers were selling the papers at $58. But one day there were not so many buyers, and a buyer said that he only had $57 for each paper. A seller approached him and sold him the shares. This process was repeated every day. When there were many buyers and few sellers, one papers raised their price, and when there were many sellers and few buyers, one papers lowered their price. This is known as the law of supply and demand, and the circle of purchases and sales is what they call the stock market of values. In the stock market we can find the best financial instrument that best suits our investor profile. That is, if I am a person with a risky profile, who is not concerned that their assets may lose, the purchase would go to stocks, warrants, or futures. If I am a conservative person, who prefers to earn even a little, his investment would go to the purchase of treasury bills or bonds whose volatility is much lower. Many people wonder why so many people invest in the stock market, and if it really is an opportunity to generate income as an investor. While it is true that the stock market is ideal for investors, it is also true that entering the stock market as a novice investor and starting to risk your capital without having the slightest idea is not something you should do. The stock market is designed for people who are willing to lose capital without falling into despair, and learn more every day about investment strategies and some other factors that are of the utmost importance if you want to start entering the world of investments. In the stock market, I recommend you investigate the strategies and techniques to start with a more stable knowledge of what the stock market is and how it works. Thanks for watching this video. I hope and it has been to your liking, and if you want me to make a separate video talking about the different ways to invest in the stock market and its best strategies, you can support us with a like. Have a nice rest of the day.